We now have a complete fuel system to supply the vrod motor in our golf cart. Let's see what it took to get to this stage. So before we start measuring up for this tank, we've got to make sure we get enough height. As you can see, we've got this old relic here, the 240 vrod fuel tank. And look how long these, try to do one hand. Have a look how long these setups are. As you can see how it gets its fuel level, they float. And if you look at here, obviously it's going to be too tall. So we've got to see if we can somehow, like within reason, we can shorten that right down. So it's still going to have a bit of travel and nothing will bottom out and stuff. So we'll still get a reading on the fuel gauge, or we might just have to bin this whole utilising the vrod fuel flange all together and do a custom job. So we'll have a quick play around, get our measurements, see what we can do to shorten it up if we can. And hopefully if we can, we'll either utilise this one here. This one has a broken fitting here, so I'll see if there's enough room to use an AM fitting, or we'll go for this brand new flange we got here. So we'll start with the bottom here. So real simple, I've already pulled the clips off the hose and stuff. I've pre-assembled it again, just to make it a lot quicker so we're not trying to fight it. So as you can see, we've got our filter on the bottom here. So that picks up all the debris and stuff. So the bonus of these vrod fuel tanks, they're made of plastic like most modern EFI systems in cars. So therefore you don't get any corrosion like the old school tanks, so you get rust and all that type of stuff. The only type of contamination you're going to get is from, say if your fuel cap's open, you get dust in there at the time, or simply from the fuel pump bowsers or something passes their strainers. So as you can see, we've got our little fuel filter on the bottom here, strainer, what do you want to call it, clips out there. Here's the bottom of the fuel pump housing, and then here goes our fuel pump. So that one slides out of that one there. You have a plug on the fuel pump obviously, and this whole unit just slides out there. And that there's the small little fuel pump. So these ones here rated to around 140, 150 horse. They're easily capable of supplying that. So I don't know why people want to upgrade these, especially when they say they do the big Screaming Eagle cams, big throttle bodies. Yet again, very pointless on a basic street bike. And they upgrade the fuel pump for no real reason, especially on a non-boosted application. So there we have it. So there goes the fuel pump housing there. So now we're going to move on to the actual fuel filter, where a lot of people actually don't know there's actually a fuel filter on the vrod. Everyone thinks of the bottom pickup there. There's actually one in this little housing here. So this all slides off, and that hose there, we've already pulled the clip off. You can see all the wiring that there pulls off there as well. So this wiring loom here is for the main fuel pump. So if you can see here, we've got this retaining ring. So that slides out there, this pulls out, and there we have it. If you ever wondered where your vrod fuel filter is, here it is here. So now we'll cover all the basic components of the lower half, and we'll organise them in their relevant location. Something like that, if it's still in frame. So now we have a spacer here. So this whole setup, as you can see, is on a spring. The whole fuel pump and everything can slide up and down, so that will come off there. And then now we're moving to the rear. So this here is what they call the float. Technically there's actually no float in there. It's just an old school terminology for a fuel level sensor. So basically these are not interchangeable. This style here, this is the later model style compared to the early model. Reason being is they use completely different technology. So these are like an ultrasonic sensor. You may find these type of sensors in like water tanks and stuff like that. So that's another reason we'll talk about shortly if we can use this on the golf cart. But nonetheless, we'll just stay focused on this basic fuel fundamental. So as you can see, there's nothing in there. So the older style use a linear scale like your normal classic old school stuff. They actually have a proper float, go up and down a scale. You measure resistance and that gives you your fuel level. So basically we've covered the whole internals of the fuel tank now. And as you can see, we have our main supply and then we have our return line. So then we look at the top of the cap, and as you can see, apart from this one snapped off, we've got our main fuel supply. Here goes our return line. As you can see, this is our fuel level sensor, fuel cap, and our one-way valve breather. So I'm pretty keen to use one of these simply for the reason it basically houses everything we need. We don't need any external parts. Maybe this fuel level sensor, we might not be able to use it. So the reason we may not be able to use this fuel level sensor is for a real simple reason, because these ultrasonic sensors sometimes they don't work with our metal, like a metal tanks and stuff. So like even when using like a water tank, you have your concrete tanks, your plastic tanks, most times they don't work with metal. So if we can't get this to work with the aluminium tank, no big deal whatsoever. We can make up a spacer, well, we can machine up a little bung to go in there, and we can utilize a Harley fuel level sensor. And that's basically it. So now we know how the fuel is getting sucked up from the fuel filter all the way through, and then we meet up with the vrod fuel rail. So as you can see, we make some imaginary lines that goes there. We've explained it: fuel in, fuel injectors, fuel regulator, return fuel there. So let's pull apart one of these fuel rails, and you can see exactly in there. So if you can see, once we pull this little fuel regulator out, there's the return port, and that comes out the center there. So all the fuel comes in our main line through the rear there, and you can see it distributes through the housing there to both injectors, and then the excessive fuel goes back through here. Once you know this is regulating its pressure as it should, it goes back to the return line. So real simple setups. These are held on by a little retaining clip, likewise with the injectors. You can see they were held on with a little retaining clip. So there you have it. That's the basic fundamentals of the vrod fuel system. Very, very simple. Not a lot of upgrades to be had. We're going to be chucking a bigger warbro pump in here, basically size for size is the factory one. This will be a one-stop shop sort of thing. So what we're going to do for the golf cart though, we're going to have to shorten all of this down, because obviously we can't have a fuel tank this big. It'll sit where the seats are. So I think it's going to be roughly around here. We don't need a lot of fuel in it, so I'm not going to be running a surge tank or anything like that. It's going to be a real compact little fuel tank. So I'm going to guess this thing's going to be cut halfway around there. So we're going to have a little jimmy up, see if we can utilize all the factory housings and the hanger and all that type of stuff, and see if we can make it work. We're starting to make progress. So we've folded up this tank. I've done a muck up the previous day. I had this all as one piece, but I had to cut those ones off because I made the fold wrong and the gap here was slightly too big. A good welder probably would have got away with it, but for me, I need it as tight as possible. So no big deal, just 2 extra welds we weren't expecting to do. So we've got our ends there now, baffle plate, the base. So at the time of this video, I can't weld the base on. Reason being is we haven't got the fittings, they haven't arrived yet, and I haven't got the billet that we're going to be machining to hold the fuel pump hanger on. So I don't know exactly what the height is going to be of that, so therefore we can't set our hanger up. So it's best we leave the base off till last, and we can set the hanger height, and we can do all the other bits and pieces. And I just want to make sure there's no swarf on here before we seal this up, because I don't want to block those little injectors up. So what we're up to now, as you can see, we'll put the end tanks on. We've got to throw the hanger in there, and we can set where our baffle's going to be, but it's ideally going to be halfway. So that should work out quite well. As for the welds, if you can look down there, you see that like it looks a little bit wavy. I'm going to put that down too, because I'm not resting on anything. So when I'm welding, obviously I'm standing up and I'm just holding it in midair like that. So I'm going to do what everyone else does. I'm going to make one of those bars, those adjustable height bars, so I can rest my hand along it, and that way there should be nice and smooth. Apart from that, pretty happy with how it turned out, especially for a little tank. Never made anything like this before. Everything's a first here on this cart. So yeah, we'll sort the hanger out now. We just finished machining up the fuel pump hanger flange. As you can see there, pretty simple really. All radius looking nice and tidy. So that's going to go on there obviously. Fuel pump hanger will go on there, and this is our locking ring that goes on top. So we'll tap this out to M6. I'll need to drill these out, make them a bit bigger. So that's all going to work like that. As for the regulator, we just need to weld on this return bung. So this is the reason why I didn't want to put the base on, because I didn't want to drill anything out and then we got swarf in here that I couldn't completely guarantee that we've got it all out. So yeah, weld that on, drill it out, weld it on, that's all done. Then we can clean all the swarf out. If we need to do other deburring and stuff, flip it upside down, weld the bottom on, and that'll be the fuel tank complete. So let's get into it. So we'll weld it on the return, we'll cut out a base, we've tacked it on, so now we're ready to weld it out. We're all welded up, good to go now. We're welded up now, so I ended up welding it internally in there. So we're going to slide everything in and should be good to go. So now you'll easily be able to follow the flow path, fuel pump to the regulator. We've got our return and that goes to the motor, simple as that. Yeah, a lot less complicated than having to run a return line, so there we have it. So we just finished making the main part of the overflow and catch can. As you can see, the stop starts there, not the best, but the more we keep practicing, the more we're getting a bit better at them now. So not so sunken in with the little crater, but as they were slow to get in there, the welds are starting to look physically nicer. So that was the welds from yesterday, well, when this video was taken, and we've improved quite a lot. So we're pretty happy. I think all up, since I've only spent, well, the first time doing aluminium welding was on the Altezza. So including the Altezza and everything else I've done in between, I've probably only spent 2 to 3 hours max behind the torch. I'm gonna say more likely 2 hours I've spent all up, so it's pretty good improvement from never doing aluminium welding. 2 hours later, we're starting to get them physically looking a lot nicer. So here goes our baffle plate ready to go in. Obviously got to clean it out. And on this side here we'll be making a couple of baffles in here for the oil wear separator. Little divider plates all in there now. Time to make some baffles for there, screwing it up, a couple other bits and pieces, and that'll be these little catch cans complete. Use the hole saw to make these holes, obviously. Those are going to be our drains for each of the compartments. What we're up to now, we're going to be modifying the vrod fuel rail, so we're going to be making a blank for where the factory return line came out, also making a blank for the factory fuel regulator, so you start machining them up. Here goes our blanks we've machined up. As you can see, we've done a double O-ring on the regulator, and there goes the fuel line blank, so we'll put them in and see if they fit. Here goes the modified fuel rail complete. This ain't the actual one we're going to be using, it's still in the cart. This is a spare one, just wanted to see if everything's going to fit. Real nice tight fit, you have to really push them in to get them in there. Bit nicer than the actual factory stuff, so there's definitely going to be no leaks, so happy with how that turned out. Tank's nearly finished, we're up to the last part, which is going to be making a bracket to help support the regulator that sits out over here. So we'll fold that up and then we'll have a overview of the whole tank because it's basically done now. So here we have our tank all done, pretty self-explanatory now. So as you can see, we put our bracket on there, bracket there, that's how we're going to bolt it to the chassis. Machined up the flange, as you've all seen, the two drains on the bottom, lower mount, all finished off, good to go. That is, yeah, I've probably never made anything this intricate before, so I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Like always, we'll get there with the welding, but heaps of practice on this, so it was good fun.